Okay, so we want to begin, as always, with our bodhicitta motivation. So, bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word. Bodhi means awakened or enlightened, and citta means the mind and heart together. So, the literal translation is awakened mind heart or enlightened mind heart. But the definition is the wish to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, everything we do on this path ultimately is with that purpose so that we can benefit others. That's what it means to be a bodhisattva. That's why people take the bodhisattva vow and continue to return to cyclic existence to help others. So, with that in mind, if we could just think about the suffering of others, people, animals, and other beings, and form the wish that the time we spent together today benefits not only ourselves, but them as well. Okay. Then we want to take just a moment to consider the lineage, our precious teachers, Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche, Tulku Pema Wangyo Rinpoche, Taklamacha Rinpoche, and so many others. Behind me here, I have a book called The Heart of Compassion by Kyabche Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche, who was one of the greatest masters of the 20th century. Trying to remember what century we're in. Okay, so without these teachers, there would be really very, very little for us to have access to. They have kept not only the words alive, but have realized these teachings and have become the embodiment of wisdom and compassion itself. So it's extremely important that they're here, and we're extremely fortunate that we have a connection with them. So we just think of them with some gratitude and respect. Okay, so today our topic is anger. What is it good for? Okay, good God, y'all. Okay, so I wanted to talk about this today because of the Black Lives Matter protests and all the anger that is flying around because of it on all sides, unfortunately. Even something so obviously, at least to some of us, so obviously um, unjust um, makes people angry at those who are protesting against it. Okay. On the other hand, um, there is a kind of anger that, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama has talked about, that initial uprising of anger that one might feel when seeing injustices. But to hold on to that anger and to cultivate it and to really increase it uh, is not actually helpful. The opposite of anger is not acquiescence. Okay. To let go of anger doesn't mean that we stop protesting, doesn't mean that we say everything is okay and we just, for the Black community, just put their necks back under the knee. It's not about that. It's about what's making you suffer, what's making you as an individual suffer. And to hold on to anger like that, it really makes you suffer. And it creates a situation where the mind is not really clear. The mind in a state of rage becomes very fogged, very closed, and blind, right? There is that saying, blind with rage, right? And if we are in a if we're blind, obviously we can't see. If we if the mind is unstable, which the mind is in a state of rage, very unstable, then we're not going to be able to see the right course of action. Okay. So I don't know who's listening to this. I don't know who's going to listen to this, but I can tell you that I really want to emphasize that what I said just a minute ago. Uh, to let go of anger does not mean to let go of the fight, so to speak. Okay. To let go of anger doesn't mean that you're saying everything is okay. All right. It just means that you want to have a clear mind. You want to have a calm mind, an open, um, an open mind in the sense of being aware of all the possibilities. Okay, there's no point in um, sort of constantly like if when we hold on to anger, we're just sort of punching ourselves over and over again. It's not fixing anything. It's not changing anything, and it's clouding our ability, as I said, to see what might be the best course of action. Okay. And that applies to anything. That applies to our personal life, our personal relationships, and also to bigger movements like this. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. The other thing I wanted to point out is the anger coming from the other side, the other side. If you want to put it into two sides, which I think it certainly seems that way. Okay. So where is that anger coming from? Right? That anger is coming from fear, from ignorance, from ego clinging. Okay. If we have, and I would venture to say this is the case in the country right now on so many different topics, which is this fierce polarization that we have now. And what has happened, it looks to me, I can't, I'm not omniscient or anything, but what looks to me like what has happened is there are um, teams, right? And people get very attached and identified with a particular team to the point where even if um, they're presented with facts that, undeniable facts that disprove their premise, whatever it may be, they push those facts away because it's threatening their ego ultimately. Okay. And of course, we don't have time to go into all the reasons, the historical reasons, and so forth. Okay. I don't want to go there. I'm just talking about what is happening in the mind. What is happening in the mind? And how can we um, use our ability, our natural abilities, to work with that so that we actually have more physical and mental health to be able to continue this movement, let's say, movement forward towards justice and peace. Those things don't come just by wishing, all right? They don't come by necessarily by violence. Okay, the important piece that I think is being missed by almost everyone is that all of this problem, which is a small word, I think, for what is actually going on, begins in the mind. Hatred begins in the mind. Hateful acts begin in the mind. Hateful words begin in the mind, right? Begin with a hateful mind, with hateful thoughts. Words don't just flow out of our mouth without the mind. Actions don't just, happen of themselves without the mind. Okay, everything begins with the mind. So if we don't start working with the mind, then these problems will never end. Okay, they will never end, and we've seen that. We've seen that. You see these people who were protesting in the 60s, which was what now? How many years ago now? I don't know, I can't do math. 60 years? 20? Yeah, 60 years ago, right? Are still protesting today against essentially the same thing. Which doesn't mean that we shouldn't try. I'm not saying that, okay? I'm worried that a lot of what I'm saying here can be and will be misconstrued. All right. So please listen carefully to what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. All right. So I'm not saying, okay, I'm not saying that we have to work on the mind and not do social action. Okay. I'm not saying that everybody should just give up and go live in a cave somewhere. And when they get their mind together, then they can come back and try to address this problem. Okay. I'm not saying that. Please don't think I said that. Okay. I'm saying that we need to work on the mind in conjunction with whatever kind of activity we decide to do. All right. And I'm talking, of course, mostly here about the Black Lives Matter movement, which I fully support. Okay. But it applies to anything. All right. We need to work on our own ignorance, our own hatred, our own desire, and so forth, in conjunction with working for Mother Teresa or donating to, you know, American Red Cross or um, helping our friend who has depression or anything. All right. We have to do those things in conjunction. And the reason we have to do those things in conjunction is because what I said before, unless and until we work with the mind, unless and until we free our mind and our heart of hatred, anger, ignorance, jealousy, pride, etc., the rest will never stop. The wrong actions, the harmful actions will never come to an end. Okay? So, with that in mind, I want to, here it is. I want to go over some verses of Shantideva with you. Okay. I'm having a little problem with my printer, but anyway, hopefully I can read everything. So, these verses of Bodhisattva are in the description. So, if you want to have a look in the description, then you can see what I'm looking at here. Okay. So there are just a few. There's this book called The Way of the Bodhisattva by Shantideva. It's a famous text that was written, I believe, in the 9th century. And I just picked a few verses here that have to do with anger in particular. This is all from chapter 6, which is his chapter on patience. So verse 7 here says, getting what I do not want and all that hinders my desire. In discontent, my anger finds its fuel. From this, it grows and beats me down. So I think we need to look at, what it is that creates anger in this case. Okay. Sometimes we can look at that and say that's a really good reason. For example, the oppression of our Black brothers and sisters. Okay, that's a good reason to be angry. Of Black men dying on a regular basis at the hands of the police. Okay, let's look at it from the other side, the racist and violent people. Okay, where does their anger come from? Not getting what they want. They want, it seems, something. I think, in fact, a lot of them just don't want Black people here at all, which is never going to happen. It's an unreasonable desire. There is a fear of losing power. And that is probably I would guess that's one of the main uh, mm, impetuses for their anger. So they're not getting what they want. So discontent, my anger finds its fuel, and from this it grows and beats me down. So that part beats me down. I think we need to see how anger harms ourselves. Okay. When I first got into Buddhism back in 1988, I was one of the main reasons actually that I had even attempted to to go to this retreat in Thailand was because I had a problem with anger. I knew I had a problem with anger, and I knew that it was unpleasant. We all know that it's unpleasant. Okay. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh, I really hope I get angry today." Nobody does that because we know that it's unpleasant. We know that it's actually something we don't typically want to feel. Okay. So, anyway, so that was the reason that I got into Buddhism in the first place, in large part, was because of that. And I remember asking this monk, I was like, okay, I really have an issue with this anger and I don't know what to do about it. All right. And he said, well, next time that you get angry, just drop the storyline why you're angry. Okay. Don't think about why. Just look at the anger itself. Okay. Just close your eyes, sit down, close your eyes, and look at what does that feel like in your body and in your mind. All right. Now, despite knowing that it's not a pleasant emotion, we all know that, I doubt that many of us have actually taken the time to really look at that, to really examine that and see it for what it is in our own body and mind as our own personal experience. Normally, when we're angry, we're very focused on the object of our anger, right? You did this, you did that. I'm angry because this person, da da da. And we don't really look at it. Okay. So, anyway, I did that. I sat down, I dropped the storyline. She did this, she did that. I remember what it was actually, but anyway. And I just looked at what does that feel like in my body and in my mind. And it was so physically and mentally painful. I was really shocked. I really felt like there was like a torrent of fire up and down my torso. I felt like someone was squeezing my brain with a vise. And when I saw the amount of suffering for myself in that anger, it really you know, it really like inspired me even more to work on it because I could see the depth of that suffering that comes with anger. So that's one thing. The other interesting thing about that is that it opened the door to having compassion for others who have anger, who are angry, which is normally not at all what we do. Okay. Normally, when we see someone who's angry coming at us, all right. Our initial response, and it's normal, I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying what normally happens, is to push them away, right? It's to run away and also, or maybe fight back, defend ourselves, um, and to judge them. Oh, they're a bad person for being angry. Look at them. I don't know. Okay. We never think, in a case of an adult, we never think um, to have compassion for them. We never think, wow, that's a hard place to be. That's a very painful state, what I'm seeing in this person right now, right? But if we see how painful it is in ourselves, then it becomes quite easy to extrapolate and see that it's also painful for that person, all right? And because we know that it's painful for us, we know it's painful for them. We have that common shared experience, right? And if we know that that person is in pain, then we should have compassion for them, right? We can have compassion for the part of them that is suffering. Compassion, again, doesn't mean giving in. It doesn't mean capitulation. All right. It doesn't mean, oh, it's okay. Yeah, I understand you're stabbing me in my face. No worries. No, no, no. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means what's like happening in our heart in relation to that person. Do you see what I mean? what's happening in our heart, what's happening in our own mind in relation to that person. Is that making us suffer or not? Right? I hope you're getting this. Okay. Then verse 10 says, if there's a remedy for when trouble strikes, what reason is there for rejection? And if there is no help for it, what use is there in being glum? So obviously, this doesn't, this kind of verse would not refer to the current protests and things like that. Uh, it's saying that, that's like when we get really upset about things that we have no control over. And sometimes if we can fix it, Shantideva is saying, sometimes you can fix it, sometimes you can't fix it. If you can fix it, then why worry? Just fix it and do what you need to do to fix it, and then it won't be there anymore. If you can't fix it, then why worry? Why be upset? You can't fix it. But you're being upset is not going to change anything. I'm not talking about the protests. Okay. Okay. I think I'm gonna the next one is, although it is their stick that hurt me, I'm angry at the ones who wield them, striking me, but they are in turn driven by their hatred. Therefore, with their hatred, I should take offense. Okay. So here Shantideva is talking about what is the motivating force, okay, behind someone hurting us, right? We are angry at that person. He says, like, if they're hitting you with a stick, right, you're angry at the person. And the stick is being wielded by that person. The stick has no control over hitting you. And he's saying here the person has no control over their own thoughts and emotions. So better to be angry with their anger than at the person themselves, because all of that is coming out of their own ignorance. Okay. And even if our teachers, relatives, and friends are now the object of aggression, all derives from factors, as we have explained, this we should perceive and curb our wrath. So this is a whole nother teaching that has to do with kind of cause and effect, right? So if you look at, I think I'm gonna see. If you look at so we're talking about the law of cause and effect, otherwise known as karma. Okay, so if you take a small example like a friend of yours, let's say losing their job, okay, and you could be very angry at the person who fired them, all right, but we also need to understand that that person has created the karma for losing their job. It's all of this really requires a lot more time than what we have. Okay. Some do evil things because of ignorance. Some respond with anger, being ignorant. Which of them is faultless in such acts? To whom shall error be ascribed? So here he's saying that, we could get angry over others doing negative things, okay? But that anger itself is negative. That anger itself, beyond that first inspiration that we might label as anger, that comes from when we see injustice, holding on to that anger is itself negative. It's a negative act because we are kind of swimming in hatred, really. Anger leads to hatred. So, how is our hating someone else or hating a group of people who are different from us, how is that going to make anything better? Our anger. How is that anger that we're holding on to? How is our hatred going to make anything better? Especially if you go back to what I was just saying a few minutes ago. That anger, and I encourage you to look at this just like that monk gave me that instruction. The next time you're angry, no matter what it is about, okay, just sit down and close your eyes and look at that. See the suffering that is there. How is your personal suffering helping the situation, right? How is your personal hatred, which is eating you up inside, making anything bad for the other person, right? It's not. It's just killing you. It's killing you. And that's kind of what the other person wants, right? They want you to suffer. They want you to suffer. And so if you're suffering by clinging onto that hot coal and burning your hand, clinging onto that hot coal of anger and burning yourself in the process, then we're doing their job for them, right? We're just doing their job for them. Okay. So then the next two verses, if unhappiness befalls your enemy, why should this be cause for your rejoicing? The wishes of your mind alone will not, in fact, contrive their injury. So I'm going to talk about these one at a time. So I see this a lot on social media and, throughout my life, actually, friends and sometimes myself, where we dislike someone or we think someone did something wrong, and then when they suffer because of it, it makes us happy, right? Because we hate them and we want them to suffer, and now they're suffering and good, all right? You know, he's saying, why should you be happy about that? Like, you're wishing them to suffer didn't make that happen. So it's kind of stupid, really, to be happy about that, right? And then the next one is really the kicker. And if your hostile wishes were to bring them harm, again, what cause of joy is that to you? Why then I would be satisfied? Are these your thoughts? Is anything more ruinous than that? So he's saying here, like, really, you want to be that person? Do you want to be that person who just like cackles over the suffering of others? And this is something I see again and again on social media, right? People really rejoicing at the suffering of others. So they say like, oh, karma's a bitch, or karma's gonna get you, like, without any understanding of what karma actually is. Yeah. And okay, yes, but why are we're gonna be happy about that? So this is like actually bringing up a whole nother thing, which is compassion for the so-called enemy. So in Buddhism, the teachers teach us that we should have compassion not just for the victim, but also for the oppressor. This is a really hard pill to swallow, I know, for a lot of people, because they don't understand what compassion is, because they are confusing compassion with capitulation, compassion with surrender, compassion with inaction. It's not about that. We can still set boundaries. You have somebody in your life, for example, who's causing you a lot of pain. Compassion doesn't say, oh, you have to let them in your life, you have to let them run over you, just lay down, be their carpet. That's not compassion. That's what we call idiot compassion. That is compassion without any wisdom. Yeah. Real compassion has wisdom. On one side is compassion, on the other side is wisdom. Okay. The wisdom that knows what is the right action. So it's not saying we can't take an action. It's not saying we can't set a boundary. It's not saying we can't get a divorce or keep someone out of our life. We can do all of those things. What it's addressing is what's happening in our hearts when we do those things. Okay. So let's say that someone is just regularly hurting us in our circle. Someone, say boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, family member, right? And we cut them off. We cut them out of our life. Break up with them, get a divorce, whatever. Okay? Tell them I'm not going to see you anymore. There's two ways of doing that same action. Okay? One, we do it with a lot of hatred in our hearts. I hate that person. They hurt me so much. I hope they die, whatever. Right? Same thing. I'm going to set this boundary because F them. Right? Or we can say, I don't hate that person. I understand that their anger is coming from, for example, their childhood. Maybe they were abused or they were raised to be have this kind of really sharp tongue that hurts others, or they're suffering in the moment, and that suffering kind of never stops for them, and so they're acting in these really negative ways. I have compassion for them, for their pain. I'm relating to them on the level of their pain, right? I have compassion for them. But I also have compassion for myself, and I'm not an idiot. So I'm going to also cut them out of my life. I'm going to set this boundary. I'm going to get a divorce, or I'm going to do whatever, right? I'm going to set the boundary. No, you cannot just keep hurting me. I also have compassion for myself and compassion for that person, because really, if we keep allowing someone to create, to be abusive, yeah, we're not helping them. We're not helping anybody. We're not helping ourselves because we continue to be abused. And we're not helping that person because they're just creating more and more negative karma by acting in these negative ways towards us and towards others. Right? So we can do exactly the same thing. Break up, you're out of my life, whatever it is that we have to do to set that boundary with compassion. Do you see what I mean? I hope you see what I mean, because it's really important. This is a main misunderstanding that Westerners seem to have when we talk about compassion. So it's important to understand this really important point. Okay. All right. So uh, then the next two verses are, so like a treasure found at home that I have gained without fatigue, my enemies are helpers in my Bodhisattva work, and therefore they should be a joy to me. Uh, so what does that mean? Helper. My enemies are my helpers in Bodhisattva work. So there's a lot of teachings that say that. There's a lot of teachings that talk about um, enemies as your teacher, enemies as your guru, enemy as your, spiritual friend. Okay, what does that mean? All right. So it's very kind of easy, to sit alone in a nice place, with incense burning and candles and, just a beautiful, quiet place, and think we have compassion and think that we have patience. Let's say patience. Let's get away from compassion. Let's just talk about patience, okay? We can sit in that environment and just feel like, oh, I'm the queen of patience. I'm so much patience. And then we walk out the door and somebody's right there, right, just waiting for us, pushing all of our buttons, and we fly off the handle. Where's our patience then? We need people to test us. We need people to push us. We need people to force us to practice. All right. So, what does that have to do with being a teacher? Well, what does a spiritual teacher do? Right? A spiritual teacher's main job is to make sure that we are progressing along the path towards enlightenment. All right. So, that means they're going to test us. That means they're going to point out our faults, which our enemies often do, or so called enemies. Yeah. We have blind spots. Everyone has blind spots. Sometimes the best thing that a so called enemy does for you is to point out your blind spots. I would take seriously, and I always take seriously, if someone is yelling at me, right, and accusing me of being a certain way that I don't think I am. I take it seriously. Doesn't mean I always believe them, doesn't mean I always think they're right, but I examine what they're saying in a very serious way, in a genuine way. They're saying I had a bad intention when I did XYZ. I ask myself, is that true? And I'm open to the possibility that they might be right. Sometimes they're right. And I say, wow, I didn't realize I was doing that. I'm going to have to stop doing that. I'm going to have to change that. That's really important. And sometimes they're wrong. People project onto us all the time things that have nothing to do with us, right? So if they're wrong, then I say, well, I looked inside myself very honestly. I know I didn't have a bad intention when I did XYZ. And so that's their problem. That's their perception. There's nothing I can do about that. I feel good about what I did, and their perception is their perception. Okay. So they also, what a teacher does is what a spiritual teacher does is they show us how far we've come on the path, and they show us how far we need to go, right? What we still need to work on, which is related to what I was just saying there. Well, what does an enemy do but that? So let's say that you've been practicing for a year, a few months, let's say a year. Let's say you've been practicing for a year. And during that time, you've been really working on patience and trying to have compassion and love for beings and so forth, right? Then this person comes along and they just start, like I said, just pushing all your buttons, and you end up losing your temper. Yeah? So after that, you can observe that, you can contemplate what happened, and you can say, hey, you know, I did really well, actually. Yeah, I lost my temper, but last year I would have lost my temper a lot sooner. Or last year, my rage would have been a lot bigger, or it would have lasted a lot longer. So we can see, oh, cool, I made some progress. That's really great. On the other hand, I still got angry, right? I still lost my temper. I still said things I wish I hadn't said. When that shows that I still have work to do, so we get a clear picture of kind of where we are, how far we've come, where we are, where we need to go when we're challenged by so-called enemies. All right. Uh, and patience is an enlightened quality, and it's something that we really need to develop. And Shantideva says, well, how could we develop this if we didn't have people like that? If everyone were kind to us, we would never be able to develop patience. In fact, this whole Bodhisattva path is predicated upon others, right? We rely on others. Without bodhicitta, there is no enlightenment for ourselves. Yeah. And if we cannot become enlightened, our suffering never ends. So they are indirectly helping us to attain enlightenment. They're helping us along the path. Okay. Since I have grown in patience, thanks to them its first fruits I should give. For of my patience they have been the cause. So they were what I just said. Okay. So we'll leave these dedication prayers for later. So, all right. Well, I hope that was helpful. I hope I didn't confuse you. And I want again to emphasize that I'm not trying to, um, debase the protests or devalue, I should say, devalue the protests or say that protesting is wrong or anything like that. I am not saying that at all. Okay. It's very um, good thing to agitate for justice. It's very necessary when there is such a vast problem as this that's causing so much suffering. It's really necessary, in my view. Okay. So, but I think that it's really worthwhile for, as I said in the beginning, for our own physical health, because constant hatred and anger, it really affects the body, affects the blood pressure, affects the heart, and other kind of illnesses that can arise from that. So for our own physical health and for our own mental health. So having our mind or our brain in a vise like that all the time, unending anger, it's just nothing but suffering, it's just nothing but suffering. So for our own benefit, it would really help us to find a way to do these things, to protest, to do all the things that we need to do, whether it's for this or something else, um, in a way that doesn't involve hatred and anger in our own hearts. Okay. Not that doesn't involve energy, okay? But that doesn't involve hating, okay? Because when we hate, we're hating hate, it just creates more hatred in the world and doesn't really solve anything in the end, okay? All right. So let's do some meditation. We only have about 15 minutes left. So just going to do some mindfulness or breathing practice just to bring the mind in the present moment, bring the mind and body together, and focus on the breath. This is something we could do in the middle of a protest. We could do that. Just bring our mind back to the breath, you know, in the middle of our contemplations about the state of the world, in the middle of looking at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever we're looking at that might be stirring up feelings of hatred and anger in our hearts. Bring the mind back. Be in the present moment. Access your enlightened nature, your Buddha nature, which is full of love, compassion, patience, and wisdom. Okay, so if you're sitting in a chair, just have your feet flat on the floor. If you're sitting on the floor, just cross your legs in whatever position is comfortable for you. All right. The rest of the instructions are the same. So your hand should be either palms down on your knees or palms like that in your lap, or with your fingers on top of each other and your thumbs touching like you're holding a goose egg. Arms are relaxed. Back is straight, but relaxed. So not like that, okay? Just straight but relaxed. Back of the neck is also straight, so your chin's going to be tucked in a little bit. Mouth is closed but relaxed. Tongue resting on the roof of the mouth, breathing through the nose. Ideally, your eyes are open and looking down about halfway. So if you just look straight ahead and then just lower your eyes. If that's not comfortable for you, just don't worry about it. Just close your eyes. It's okay. Okay, so this is our posture. Now, what we're going to do in this practice is to try to keep our awareness of the breath, try to keep a consistent awareness of the breath. So we're going to bring our attention here towards the tip of our nose, at the end of our nostrils, and we're going to notice the breath coming in and out. So let's take a moment just to do that. Just notice that sensation. Okay. So then what are we doing with the mind? We are not trying to stop thoughts. It's a common misconception. Just let the thoughts come and go without getting involved. Right? So thought will arise, dwell, and disappear. It'll be replaced by another thought that arises, dwells, and disappears. On and on like that. Okay. And while those thoughts are going through our mind like clouds in the sky, we just keep our mind on the breath. Okay. So what we're trying to avoid is jumping into a big storyline, right? That just takes us away from the meditation altogether. So let's say we're sitting here doing our meditation and the thought arises, it's a nice day today, which is a very nice day today. Let's say it's a really nice day today. And just let that go. And next thought will come up, vegan donuts. I don't know. Next thought will come up, bird seed. Next thought will come up, I miss my mother, whatever. Okay. That we just let that go, let them go, and keep coming back to the breath. What we want to avoid is this sitting, same thought arises, oh, it's a nice day. And then we're off and running. Oh, after this, I'm going to go see I'm going to go with my friend or whatever, my husband, and we're going to go for a big walk in the park. And then, oh, these parks, I hope everyone's okay and nobody's wearing masks. I'm not sure. I'm a little bit, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what we're trying to avoid. All right. Just let the thoughts come and go. Bring the mind back to the breath. If we do run off into a storyline, which is totally normal, completely expected, actually, As soon as you realize, oh, really gotten distracted, just bring the mind back to the breath. That's it. That awareness that realizes we got distracted is very, very good. That's exactly the same thing we're trying to develop. Okay. All right. So take the posture. Make sure the back is straight, but relaxed. Notice the breath coming in and out of the nose. And use that sensation to keep the mind in the present moment, here and now. So I'll ring the gong to start and also to finish. Okay. Bring the mind back to the breath. Gentle awareness on the sensation of the breath coming in and out of the nose. At the same time, you're aware of everything else around you, the sound of the birds or the feeling of your body in the chair on the floor. But your main focus is on the breath. So it should be really relaxed and spacious, but aware of that sensation. And your body should be as relaxed as possible while maintaining the posture. So relax your shoulders. If you're holding any tension somewhere, just let it go. Okay. Okay, so let's read these two verses together. That where it says dedication prayers in the description. May bodhicitta, precious and sublime, arise where it has not yet come to be. And what has arisen, may it not decline, but grow more and more. And now, as long as space endures, as long as there are beings to be found, may I continue likewise to remain, to drive away the sorrows of the world. Okay, so now if anybody has any questions, now is the time to ask. I don't wait long, so if you have a question, you need to jump in there and just put it in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer. Okay? No questions? Not seeing any questions. Okay. All right, great. So have a good day, and please, really have good thoughts that we can all keep peace in this world. and that there's also justice. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye. Have a great Sunday.